must be muted.
Live event playback is not supported on this client.
What does it say? Okay, that's not good. Well, Susan, I think that in spite of one or two little technical glitches, my impression is that we are actually together with all the happy warriors this evening here live on YouTube.
I'm sure there must be a way. It would be, but they can see us. It would be if we could see them, then we would know if they're alive.
That would be.
We could say everybody wave or do something.
Wouldn't that be lovely? That would
But
be lovely.
I don't think we have. I mean, we're having a hard enough time with the technical details, just getting us live.
Well, actually, everything is smooth, excepting that we were hoping to be able to actually see it ourselves on that computer right over there, but unfortunately, that's not happening.
My computer does not want to let me join this YouTube.
What does it say?
It's saying you are not invited to this event. No, it's actually saying live event playback is not supported on this client.
On this client?
I don't know what client that is.
Are you a client of somebody that I don't know about?
I don't know. Anyway, we'll do without it. All
Fine.
It means is that I can't read comments, so you'll have to read comments, all the comments. But should we kick
well,
this
you know
off?
what? Here, this is really nice. We've got Willie saying everything working well, and Christy says hi, and somebody from Ellensburg says hi. So yeah, we loveEllensburg, Washington.
We like the rodeo
anyway,
there.
so it would have been nice. We'll see we'll figure out what went wrong. Would have been nice to be able to sort of see confirmation. But anyway, here we are.
It was a super chock full week of things going on, and we just wanted to chat with people about it. So can I kick off?
Certainly, of course you can.
I want to ask you what your favorite part of the State of the Union address was. And the only caveat I'm giving is it can't be what mine is, because you're going to then turn around and ask me, and I don't want to find myself that I can't answer it.
Okay, so I'm as divine, using spectacular powers of psychic insight, what you would say.
Right, and don't say that.
And then not to say that. If you want to speak about favorite moments, I think it was probably Nancy tearing up the papers. I mean, that was probably my naughty Nancy letting go with a fit of fury. I thought that was pretty neat.
It was watching her. I mean, it was hard to keep my eye on the president because she was constantly twitching and moving and shuffling papers and making grimacing. So yes, that was kind of like a sideshow that was going on. And but I'll tell you my favorite part. And leave aside content. I mean, it's great to hear that the economy is doing well. Obviously, all those things are good to hear. And I love that the fact that the president made a plea for the unborn, and that he spoke about all sorts of things that policy. There was only one policy idea I disagree with him on that he mentioned, but there were a lot of obviously I approve of most of it, almost all his policies, and so that was fun. My favorite emotional, I actually found myself coming close to tearing up, was Rush Limbaugh, the recognition of Rush Limbaugh. But I want to explain why, because there were a lot of emotional moments. I mean, he is a showman. He knows what he's doing. And so you had the Tuskegee Airman along with his, was it a grandson?
Great-grandson.
A great-grandson. You had, a mother who sadly has been widowed, and her son is given, her husband gave his life for the nation. You had lots and lots of emotional moments. You had the little girl who was the youngest premature baby to survive at this point. So there were a lot of emotional moments. So it was more than an emotional moment with Rush Limbaugh. I'll tell you, listen to me, Rush Limbaugh. What I thought for a moment is that Rush Limbaugh paved the way for not only for Donald Trump, which I think he did, but he paved the way for people to be proud conservatives. And that includes you and me. And the reason I think there's a parallelism with Donald Trump is because, you know what? I started listening to Rush many years ago. I barely listen to him now just because I'm not in the car a lot. I don't have a lot of time to listen to the radio. But when I would listen to him, there were things I disapproved of. There was times he made fun of people or called somebody a name that I thought was silly and juvenile. I disapproved. But what he did is, by doing language like that, of course, he got himself known. Because the left couldn't stop telling you what a terrible person he was, which let a lot more people know about him. And it was effective. And he was funny. He was clearly enjoying being a conservative. Yes. And then when you actually listen to him describe and discuss something seriously, he made a lot of sense. And so I really think that in many ways, all conservatives, I did support George W. Bush when he ran for office. But at the time, he used a phrase that was really a backhanded compliment, which was compassionate conservatism.
Oh, it's terrible. Yes,
and what that suggested was that conservatism is not compassionate, meaning, of course, that Democrats are the compassionate ones. And he was going to do something new. And Rush was really the person who got the attention, who stood up and said, you know what, there are intellectual arguments to be made, but it's fun to be a conservative. It's fun to be conservative because we like people, and conservative policies are good for people. They make people happy. And Democratic policies make people miserable, and we're having fun. And President Trump looks like he's having fun. So to me, that was really, really moving because the I don't even know how to pronounce this word, ignominy.
Ignominy.
That was hurled at Rush, and the terrible things said about him. Remember, do you remember that he was blamed by one major newspaper's cartoonist for the bombing in Oklahoma?
Oh, right. Yeah, right.
I mean, the hatred hurled at him, and the fact that he basically laughed it off. He didn't grovel. He didn't apologize. He didn't try to explain. And you know what? There are times I didn't like what he was saying. I didn't like the way he said it. But you know what? It's irrelevant, because the fact is that it was effective, and it gave him the window to give all of us the opportunity to express our views.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was really very touching to me. What was your favorite moment?
Well, I just want to say that we need to come up with an approach on the speech that is that employs some of the principles of ancient Jewish wisdom. Because that's why people are here. But before we go to that, let's see some of the people who are here. This is very cool. I wanted to tell you we've got somebody. Willie is in Ontario, Canada, which is great. New York City, Philippines. Gloria Lynn is in the Philippines, and Pittsburgh. I mean, look, Pittsburgh is at least as exotic as
the Philippines.
We
actually were in Pittsburgh last year taping a TV show, and we got a tour, and it was really fascinating.
When we on that lookout over the river, it was lovely.
We had a fun time at
Pittsburgh. Here's my favorite. Salilo is in Namibia.
Namibia, well, that's cool.
Namibia, which when I used to live near the southern tip of the African continent, was called Southwest Africa.
Well, Namibia is a cooler name than Southwest
Namibia is a
Africa,
much better name, no question about it. But it's fantastic. South Korea. Olivia's in South Korea, which is wonderful. This is so lovely to see you all from here. We'll go back to the topic in just a moment. Somebody else from Canada. Somebody else retracted their comment. Lincoln, Nebraska. This is so lovely. You're all over the place.
Well, you should at least say some names.
And
you're naming places, not people.
Yeah, I know.
We're more into people than places.
We have Willig from Wilson. Wilson is from Ecuador, but he's actually in New York City right now, so that's New York City. Tiffany is in Denver.
I see Seth from Lincoln, Nebraska.
Yeah, right. Walter, Canada. Idaho, sorry?
This can get boring, though.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's not. I don't want to bore you guys all, but you happy warriors, but I'm not bored. This is great. I love seeing where you're all from. As you all know, I maintain a large map with pins in it to represent every place that listeners are listening to the podcast on the regular weekly show, which you can see here on the Rabbi Daniel Lapin channel on YouTube as well. But okay, Susan Lapin, back to you.
No, I was just saying, so that was my favorite moment of and I did have, and I did actually relate it to something in the Bible, which is that what we're told is that Nachshon ben Aminadav from the tribe of Judah, that the Jews did not enter the sea that they did not know at the point when they were leaving Egypt. They didn't know it was going to split, obviously. They didn't enter it en masse. One person stepped forward first. And that was really what I felt when Rush Limbaugh.
Rush stepped forward, yeah, he did.
Stepped forward first. And
that
he got
great.
A lot of daggers in his back and front.
Well, God bless him, and we pray for a recovery over there.
So what was your favorite moment?
Well, it wasn't so much a
Nancy.
moment. Nancy tearing up
Pelosi.
was great, because she was obviously releasing pent-up frustration from an hour and 20 minutes.
It's healthy to release your frustration.
Yes, but here's what intrigues me about the whole thing. Most of you who are part of our, let me call it our extended congregation, all of you happy warriors everywhere, including Pat in Wollongong, Australia. This is great. Fort Lauderdale. Thanks very much indeed. Where's Noam from? I don't know. He hasn't told us, but he will. Okay, here is what intrigues me. You regular congregants, you all know that you won't hear me talking about theology. Why not? Because theology is books and books and books and books of what people think about God. I have that much interest in what people think about God. However, I am much more interested in what God thinks about people. And that's a book, a majestic and mysterious and a magical volume called the Bible. And that's why it is. And you'll notice that the 5 books of Moses are in written form, and I say in written form because ancient Jewish wisdom unpacks a whole lot of hidden, encrypted information. But in written form, the 5 books of Moses doesn't talk about the afterlife. No 72 virgins when you get to heaven, nothing about that. These 5 books of Moses talks about how to run your life and your society right here, right now, wherever you are and whenever you live. And so that concerns real parts of life, things having to do with families, things having to do with money, things having to do with relationships, business relationships with people, all of that. There's so much of it in the 5 books of Moses. A lot of it is skipped over in Sunday school just because it's boring if you don't really know what's going on. I mention this because the President's State of the Union speech last night was very real-worldy, if you know what I mean. It focused and spoke about the things I, as a normal human being, really care about, as opposed to the theology that was coming from the left. So in other words, the Democrats booed and sat down and grumbled when the president spoke about not giving free medicine to illegal immigrants. Now, I care about that because in the real world in which we live, if you use money for this, then it's no longer available for that. And one of the things that smart parents are always trying to teach their children are these basic ideas of budgeting. There is a fixed amount of resources, and you may use it over here, you may use it there, you may use part of it here or part of it there. But it's simple for me to understand that if medical resources are being given to illegal immigrants, then there's less for Americans. That's not hard to understand.
You know what? There's a building in Washington, D.C. They print money. And Congress can just tell them to print more money.
Yes, and you may think Susan is joking, but she has been reading up lately on what's called MMT, Modern Monetary Theory. Professor Elizabeth Kelton from Binghamton University, New York State University, is an advisor to Elizabeth Warren. And modern monetary theory states explicitly that government can never run out of money because they can always print more. Now, without spending too much of a detour going to that subject, what is the flaw in that argument? I mean,
Sounds good.
The government prints money, they own the mint, let them just roll the presses. And the answer is, in a nutshell, and again, these are things we can talk about at length at another time if people want to, the flaw in that is that something called inflation, the more money that's printed and pushed out into the population, if it's not matched by equivalent productivity through a marvelous mechanism called the free market, the value of the money goes down. It becomes increasingly expensive then to pay those debts. You see, printing money does involve debts. And when you want to pay back that money and it costs you 5 of your current dollars to pay back $1 of yesterday's debt, and then 100 of your dollars, and then 1,000 of your dollars, that's the result of printing too much money. This is exactly what we can see happening in Central America, in Venezuela. It's, of course, what happened during the 1930s in Germany, pre-war Weimar Germany, where they used to speak about requiring a wheelbarrow full of banknotes in order to purchase a loaf of bread. And so these are real problems. And so I also know one other thing about the real world, and that is Lapin principle number 707. And that is that a line of infinite length will form in front of the window where they're giving out free stuff. Now, how many people in Africa would like to relocate to the United States of America where they can get free medicine, free education for their children, welfare, and a wealth of other payments? The answer is a huge number, billions. I mean, it's a lot of people. How many people would like to come from India and from Bangladesh? A lot. So we have to ask whether the mechanism of immigration is designed to provide relief to people around the world. Are we welcoming immigrants in order to make other people happier than they currently are? Or do we bring in immigrants because they can add to the value, the net value of the United States of America? I have no doubt that it is the second. It is not the business of the government of this country to make good the pain of the entire world. It is the obligation of this country to worry about United States citizens. And I will say just one more thing, because I know you're all waiting for Susan to join us in again. One more thing is and I lost my train of thought.
Okay, well, I'll just say that you're actually not completing the thought, because you cannot relieve the pain of an endless world. All you do is destroy
possible.
America. So what was that Churchill said? Socialism makes everyone equally miserable. America can be destroyed, so it is as miserable a place as everywhere else, and we will also want to go somewhere else. But it doesn't, bringing in people in endless numbers doesn't end up relieve their suffering. All it means is that they've moved the location of their suffering.
And what I was going to say is that it is very possible that to God Almighty, the blood of every human being is of equal value. I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe he too makes judgments about people. I don't know. He hasn't told me. But one thing I do know is that to a politician in the United States of America, to an elected representative in the United States of America, the blood of Americans has to be more expensive than the blood of any other nation. For an American president to speak about, we feel the same for everybody, it's complete nonsense. We once had a president who refused to acknowledge American exceptionalism. And so for me, and as I say, employing a lens of ancient Jewish wisdom, the president's emphasis on America, the Americans, improving life not for the world, but for Americans. It was so refreshing because it was realistic. He was talking about how the world really works.
I want to get off the topic now on to the next topic, because we really want to move pretty quickly. But I want to just make that one of our daughters, daughter number 6, actually made a comment on the speech that I had not thought of and I've not seen anybody else write about. And it was actually the Democrats finding religion, which is very nice because it's been missing from they're becoming more and more increasingly anti-religious. We happen to, when we pray in synagogue, we happen to pray in a synagogue where men and women sit separately. And that is something that Jews who follow the Torah, that is part of what we do, is we sit separately. Prayer is not a time for flirting. It's not a time for even being involved with the your spouse. You're there, and women and men separate because it just, because that's what we do.
It's obvious. I mean,
Well,
gosh.
it's one of those things that Democrats were always really upset about. It really bothers progressives. And they
We
get
actually
angry
once
about
had
it.
a Democratic
Bella Abzug,
New York
Congresswoman.
Congresswoman visit our synagogue, and she lost it because the men and women were sitting separately. I was the rabbi, Susan was my wife. We were sitting on opposite sides, and she just lost it. She was out of control.
She ended up getting a little embarrassed because she tried to explain to the women, on the assumption that we were obviously all stupid and didn't know. She tried to explain there were synagogues in the other parts of town where we would be allowed to sit together. And what she didn't know is that almost all the women, I was one of the rare exceptions who had actually grown up in a Torah home. Most of the women had moved from those other synagogues because they found them incredibly insipid and lacking any meaning.
So you were saying last night.
This is what daughter number 6 off. She said, I turned on late and I see that the Democrats had gender segregation. The women were all seated one place and the men were seated someplace else. So it's
funny.
just nice to see the Democrats giving a nod to religion and saying, yes, women and men should be separate.
Talking of giving a nod, give a nod to Shanna and Andrew.
Oh, hi, Shanna and Andrew.
And Jim.
And Jim, too.
Jim from Indianapolis, yes.
Okay.
Hi, Jim. It's sure great to be able to see you. Isn't technology wonderful? Which is, again, I've been talking, or at least contemplating this week, a little bit about ways in which humans and animals are different from one another. And of course, technology, starting off with the use of fire. I think we could say that fire is probably step one in the human embrace of technology. So what starts with fire ends with a cell phone and a computer, and this technology that allows us to be together. Now, we're not confusing this with really being together. If we were all together in one room, there'd be a different atmosphere, obviously, and we'd all be feeling this surge of spontaneity. But we're doing the best we can in a remarkable kind of a way. So anyway, this is really terrific, and I'm sorry if I keep looking over to see where folks are listening and watching from, but I just get an irrepressible surge of excitement at seeing that we are overcoming the limitations of geography. It's extraordinary.
So, to move on to another topic, we did say we were going to discuss, we are not fans of hate crime legislation. We've never been fans of hate crime legislation. And it's back in the news. And it's back in the news because of antisemitism, which is not something we call lightly. But let's say it's back in the news because there have been an increasing number of people and it's been happening for much longer than you've been hearing about it. It hit the front pages because of a specific attack in one rabbi's home during the holiday of Hanukkah. But there have been an increasing number of attacks, and they are overwhelmingly, sorry to say, for members of the black community, of people walking up.
Can I just say, I want to stop using the phrase black community, because there isn't
Blacks,
such a thing. They're from mostly disturbed black males.
No, it's women now.
Oh,
too.
women also.
That's
okay,
not true.
fine.
It's not males.
All right. Okay.
And I don't know that they're all
by the
disturbed.
way, I object to the term for the Jewish community as well, because if you gathered every self-identifying American Jew into a huge stadium and you try to find at least one thing that they all agreed upon, I am positive, beyond a shadow of any doubt, that the only thing that every American Jew would agree on is that Adolf Hitler was a very bad man.
Here's a problem, because I agree with you in theory. However, it isn't
incidental. We have black friends who are as bothered by this.
However, it's not, just like it is not incidental that so many of the big names pushing for impeachment are Jewish.
Yeah,
it's not incidental that these attacks are coming by blacks.
When you say not incidental, what you mean is that there are reasons we can talk about.
Yes.
Or maybe we're not allowed to talk about.
But we will be talking about.
We can. So yes, it's not a coincidence that Schiff and Nadler and Schumer and the 3 law professors they brought to testify during the House hearing, it's not a coincidence that they're all Jews. And by the way, there's a podcast of a few weeks weeks here on YouTube. If you go to the Rabbi Daniel Lapin channel, you can go back a few weeks and you'll find a show entirely about Jews, and I said divine or diabolical.
It's also not a Dershowitz. In other words, the
Yes.
other side is also Ben Shapiro. The other side also has the proponents are also, and we are going to discuss that in our master class, which
Yes.
is coming up. I mean, that is really one of the major conversation points, and we hope a lot of you are going to join us in that class.
Do you want to maybe just a real quick, just summary, just tell people about it, because
Starting
not everyone.
Starting next week, we are doing 10 sessions. In 1999, we published a book called America's Real War. And it made the case that there's a fault line going through America. Now you're sitting there going, duh. Well, right now it's duh. Everybody knows there's a fault line going on in America. There's a huge divide in America. But in 1999, it actually wasn't so obvious, except my husband did see it. And he wrote about it. And he said the fault line wasn't between the groups that, quite frankly, Democrats and liberals were trying to make fight each other, men, women, rich, poor, black, white, Jews, Christians. It was actually between those who said that the Bible and traditional values, Judeo-Christian values, were necessary and is what kept our country safe and prosperous and healthy and happy. And those who said those old-fashioned values needed to get out of the way because they were impediments to progress. And the book, when you talk about, when I said Rush Limbaugh pulled a lot of knives out of his front, you didn't get as many knives, but boy, you sure got your share of death threats and attacks.
Very often from?
Very often from Jews.
Yeah.
And because part of the book was explaining the question that we got asked all over and over and over again, why are Jews so liberal? So when you say it's not a Jewish community, it's true and it's also false. And when we're talking, anyway, so we're going to be doing.
No, it's not the Jewish community. I stick by that. It's Jews.
But yeah, but you.
It's people of Jewish ancestry. It's not members of the Jewish community. That's not
Okay,
true.
but-
Would
so
you
what would you
consider
say-
yourself to be in the
Wait.
same? Listen, I emphasized at the time in 2000 when Joe Lieberman ran with Al Gore for the presidency.
Right, we did not vote for him.
Not
And
only didn't we vote for him,
we objected to the concept that you must vote for him because he's your race.
it's primitive and tribalistic.
However-
and furthermore, we certainly would not consider ourselves part of the same community as Joe Lieberman.
Okay, I agree, but at the same time, you have to have a way to discuss it. That there is this. You have to be blind not to see that there's a prominence, and you have to be blind not to see, which de Blasio and many liberals have tried to do because they keep on insisting that anti-Semitism is because of Trump and because of right-wing.
Yes.
They are actually deliberately being blind to the fact that, the majority of these attacks are from black people. And that's not a random, sampling. It's because there are things that are being taught to the black community that is causing them to
Stop
be.
saying black
So
community.
I don't know what to say then.
Because
it's
just think
not
about
all-
our situation. We are horribly embarrassed
Right.
by
and
people
and
like
we have
Schiff
friends
and
who are
Schumer.
black who are horribly embarrassed by this
Absolutely.
as well.
So in the same way as we can discuss
So what do
rationally,
you call it?
It may not be politically correct, but in the same way we can discuss why it is that so many Jews are liberal, as we did in our book America's Real War, and we're going to be reissuing
Let's just
it.
tell people because people might want to join us. Anyway, the book was 1999, pre 9/11, pre homosexual marriage, pre so many things that have gone on in the world. It's time for an update. It is a powerful book. It gives a lot of arguments and it walks people through some of the pitfalls. As much as we love dear friends of ours, we've seen sometimes people, for example, saying, well, I cannot be a conservative because Rush Limbaugh insults people on his shows. I cannot vote for Donald Trump because 25 years ago he used a word that I find offensive. That's like, it's a pitfall, and we see people falling into it. And that was one of the things the book did, is it gave people to feel proud to stand up for what you believe in. That doesn't mean that you're saying that one side is saints and one side is sinners. There are not saints on
Yes.
earth. You want to talk about saints, you're not talking about reality. But and it also explained why so many Jews are on the far left. At that point it was called liberal, now it's called leftism. Anyway, we're updating it, and we're doing it we're asking your help to update it. So we have a 10 sessions, over the course of 5 weeks, 10 sessions. It's going to take place on a private Facebook page where we'll be able to interact. When you sign up, you get a PDF copy of the old book. You also will get a free copy of the new book as soon as it's out, and your name will be put in as a supporter. There's a
And
better
so
word
if I
than
want more
supporter.
information on this, where would I go?
You have to say it because I always
We
get
would
confused
go.
by the
We would
slashes.
go to. We would go to our website, rabbidaniellapin.com, and then we'd go /masterclass, or as people on this side of the Atlantic might prefer to say it.
Masterclass.
So, rabbidaniellapin.com /masterclass, or,
Masterclass.
but spelt exactly the same
So we do
way.
hope you'll join us. And, however, okay. So
I
why
would
did
just,
I say
would
this?
just issue this
Why did
caveat.
we go off on
The
that?
book is incredibly prophetic, and I'm not boasting, as you'll see in a moment. I'm just telling you that written in '99, the book really laid out everything that was going to happen. It left out, there were additional things that the book did not predict the arrival of Islam as a major factor. The book didn't predict what was going to become of immigration, although I did speak about the 1964 Immigration Reform Act, which was hugely significant and again driven by Jews who wanted to change the composition of the kind of people coming into the United
Jews
States
and
of
others.
America.
Let's just be fair.
Jews,
It's not-
Jews
it's
and
and
others.
others. It
Yeah,
wasn't,
no. So,
you know, Teddy
so we're
Kennedy
being
was
very
not
honest.
Jewish.
Not because I'm a prophet, not because I'm so clever, but I'm very good at applying the timeless truths of ancient Jewish wisdom, and applying the permanent principles of ancient Jewish wisdom to political or sociological or historical phenomena means that out of that will flow insights into what is going to hatch out of the egg we're currently looking at. And so it's actually a lot of fun going back and say, wow, this is beautiful. This is exactly how it played out. And so everyone who joins us for Tuesday nights, and is it Tuesday nights?
It's Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Thursday.
And of course, we know that everybody's got busy lives. And if you're not able to make one or two or all of the classes, you will have access to them online. And we're excited about hearing people telling us, hey, let's remember, can you talk about this? I had a question about this. Please help us understand another thing. It just gives you a kind of a conduit to us to help us rewrite the book. And we really would like to get this done quickly because we think it was a very important book.
I know this is
a very important
very
book.
unprofessional
But who
because
are you seeing? Your
my eyes
going-
keep going to the left,
what are
my
you
left
seeing?
here.
Tell me
Just
what you're
because
seeing.
this is so neat to see you all, folks. It's so great to be together with you. Mary Ann in Ohio. April is in New Jersey. Bill, Portage, Indiana. Shanna, it's about Martin Luther King. Christy says she's joining us in the class.
Oh, good. Hi, Christy.
Okay, so here's a comment we need to go back to. She says, it sounds like the black people who have committed crimes against Jewish people have been extremist and disturbed. Wait, I don't know, extremist or disturbed. I mean, obviously there are problems. However, I want to make clear, it's not just crimes against Jewish people. This is what we're objecting to. This is not a unique, it's not as if Jews have been suffering from an epidemic of violent crime, while all other Americans of other religions have been enjoying life in a cocoon of tranquil peace. No, there's been an epidemic of crime that has taken over the lives of everybody in America. And it's not just Jews. The very night that the store was shot up in Jersey City, a young female student at Barnard College in New York was viciously tortured and murdered just outside Central Park. Everybody's speaking about what happened in Jersey City, but the murders and rapes and robberies and assaults that are being inflicted on all Americans are being ignored. We're pretending they don't exist.
So can we go back, because this explains why we're not in favor of hate crime legislation. In other words, so there was a specific case, a black woman named Tiffany Harris walked over to some identifiably Jewish women and slapped them and shouted expletives. And so New York had put in a new law, which basically made it much harder to keep people in jail. In other words, you couldn't demand cash bail for many crimes. And the Attorney General Barr came in and said, well,
who, by the way, a great guy.
Yeah.
Attorney General Barr, if you haven't yet read his speech that he gave at Notre Dame University within the last month, do yourself a favor. You'll find it on the Department of Justice website. William Barr, speech at Notre Dame.
It's a fantastic speech.
Read it. It'll send shivers down your spine. It's a truly great speech. And you know I don't use that. I don't say that about a lot of speeches. I think last night was a historic speech. I don't think it was a great speech. I think it was a wonderful speech. But the speech given by Attorney General William Barr at Notre Dame a month ago, you'll appreciate reading it. It's truly a great speech. The man is remarkable.
However, in other words, what happened is the federal government said to New York, if you can't handle your own problems, we'll have to find a way to come in some ways. And so she's being charged under a felony now, hate crime. The problem with hate crime, as my husband said, is it's not okay to go slap anybody and then curse at them.
Which is
That's
happening
just not
with
okay.
increasing frequency.
And we dislike the idea, the assumption that you know what's in somebody else's mind. And it's even, and I meant to cut it out, and I forgot where she's from. There's a district attorney in one of the states that now says, it's talking about rape accusations, that even when the who are the people who decide whether you should press a case or not, the grand jury, even when they say there's not enough evidence that it should be charged as a crime or even come to trial, she says it doesn't matter. Anytime a woman says something happened to her, it has to be treated as a crime, even if there's no evidence, even if there's counter evidence.
Look, in a nutshell, here's what's wrong with hate crime. It gives the government the right to apply different punishments to different people based on what the state interprets was in your mind. That's not the way justice works. Justice works that if Tom and Jerry and Nancy and William all commit the same act, they all get the same punishment. Not that the state says, well, he gets a lighter punishment because it wasn't what we deem to be a hate crime. What's that got to do with anything? Don't grant the state additional power ever. And the power to decree what's in your mind and therefore to decide, yes, it was a hate crime or what. The action was the same thing as the other person. Very bad.
But I want to say, even, in other words, if this woman, it wasn't what's in her mind, she was shouting expletives, even then it's wrong because somebody else decides, well, I'm going to knock down elderly people or I'm going to knock down people who have red hair because I don't like red hair. Sorry, none of that is acceptable. So if you have somebody who is fomenting hatred, and there are people out there and they get ignored, fomenting hatred and saying, let's go out and kill this group, fine. That person, now you're talking conspiracy. There are all sorts of charges that should come against that person. But the individual who knocks somebody down, I don't want to hear, well, if you knock down this person who fits 4 criteria, you're going to get punishment A. But if you knock down somebody who happens to be a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, we're going to look the other way. Yeah. No, knocking people down is wrong.
I'm going to read you something that somebody said, and you are going to comment, all right?
Okay.
Okay. Oh, we got such great... everyone's joining here. Okay. There's a severe lack of civility and decorum in the whole country. The lack of respect for each other is amazing. Comment.
I agree.
All right, my turn. Now you say you comment now.
You comment now.
Okay, thanks.
The problem is when you comment, then I have to... No, go on.
You have to what?
Forget it.
Are you...
Forget it.
Are you heaping abuse on me?
No, you're trying to see, you're deciding what's in my mind. You may not do that.
Okay, but when you cut yourself off in the middle of a speech, you're about to say something not nice, and you're applying good
maybe not
good
nice,
discipline.
maybe just easily misunderstood. Anyway, go on. You comment.
Yes. So, New Dawn Rising. There's a severe lack of civility and decorum in the whole country. The lack of respect for each other is amazing. I don't want your respect. I don't need your respect. But don't punch me out because you don't like the way I look or because I'm not moving fast enough in the line. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about crime. let's not, you're asking for too much. I mean, you want everyone to respect everyone else. That's ridiculous. I'm sorry. The streets are full of people that I am not going to be respecting. I certainly am not going to disrespect them. I'm not going to be rude. But in terms of whether I feel respectful, no,
I think
absolutely
you're
not.
And I don't think that's what it was a she, right?
No, I don't know. I'm not sure.
I don't think that was what she was saying, that you must respect, you must look up to everybody in the terms.
The lack of respect for each other is amazing. Oh,
that means she's saying
as
decorum,
a
the right
symptom of
treating
the
each
behavior.
other,
Yeah,
treating each other
right
with
now
courtesy.
we're talking about crime. We're talking about actions. And I'll tell you one of the most loathsome critiques of the President's State of the Union address last night that I've heard repeatedly today, again and again and again. It was so divisive. Do we say divisive or divisive?
We say divisive, you say divisive.
That's what
we
I
say
thought.
tomato, you say
All right,
tomato.
fine.
There's a song we could burst into here if we were a
And
different type
again,
of people.
it's a critique with no foundation to it whatsoever. Divisive has come to mean not agreeing with the Democrats. You're being divisive. That's really the way the language is used, number one. Number two, we are a two-party system, and the president is always of one party or the other. And for the president to advance his views, even though they are different from the views of perhaps half of America, or maybe not, is fine. That's not being divisive. It's doing exactly what a president is supposed to be doing. I don't think that the last administration was ever accused of being divisive, and that same claim could easily have been made. Anyway, it's a meaningless charge, a meaningless allegation, a meaningless critique.
Well, I
view.
think, again, when you did a great thought tool this week, which I hope everybody read, but it had to do with perspective. And when two people come from the same perspective, they can disagree on details or on methodology, but they share the basics. I think that there is a device. I disagree here a little because I think there is a divisiveness. I think it's exactly why you wrote America's Real War, to say there is a divide.
Oh, there's a divide, sure.
Because we're not coming from the same perspective. So it's not a question of, we all agree that human life should be respected. Here's how I think we will best attain that goal. Here's how you think we will best attain that goal.
And that you're saying not the current
That's
condition.
not the current. The current
Right.
is a completely different perspective of, well, I don't think that every human life is equally valuable. That's why I can support euthanasia for elderly people, and I can discuss that maybe people who are mentally incompetent shouldn't be kept alive, should be murdered by the state. And that's a different viewpoint. And so I sort of disagree with you, because I think you're right. The word divisive is used, the word bipartisanship, which, look, to the New York Times, bipartisanship means Republicans must agree with Democrats. That's called being bipartisan. Only Republicans can be divisive. Democrats are not able to be divisive. However, that isn't, but I do think that there is
Shanna says
divisiveness. Jews
are being identified and singled out, and that hasn't happened in America before. And she's right. That is
correct.
True. Yeah, absolutely.
But I just want to point out that one of the big things we spoke about in America's Real War that we will speak about again is that for many years, not in terms of attacks, but in terms of the elite, the New York Times, the media, Hollywood, Christians were being singled out. That was one of the big things we spoke about in the book. And we said, Christians, please do not turn the other cheek. And you know what? It's partially because we didn't, and that includes, can I say the Jewish community? That includes many Jews did not stand up there. There were Jews who did defend the Christian community. And I'm talking about when pieces of artwork, like a crucifix in urine.
The Brooklyn Art Museum. And here, Rudy Giuliani, whom I did not respect as a prosecutor when he was in New York. I believe he built his career on trying to destroy the life of Mike Milken for the equivalent of a parking ticket. However, he has done a lot of great things since then, and one of them was that he attacked the Brooklyn Museum for displaying anti-Christian artwork, which it did, and in a horrifying
and one
ways.
of the things we said in the book is, at that point, forget Muslims, because it wasn't on the radar screen when that book was written, but had they put a Jewish symbol and replaced it in the piece of art,
there would have been shrieks of outrage.
Now, at this point, I think it would be ignored. But I think that so part of what we think that the attack on the Jewish community now, Shauna, that you're talking about, came about because we we and the Christians did not stand up and say, this is completely unacceptable. And people did not react with the force that was needed. And, you know, in this case, the Christians were the canary in the
Randy
mine.
says,
yeah,
your teachings are assault to American society. Now, he means that in a positive
SALT,
way.
not assault. Not
No,
assault.
He means that positively. Thank you, Randy. There'll be other people who'll say, yes, and doctors tell you not to have too much salt. But he doesn't mean it that way. Now, Vienna writes,
Yes.
I like how you two don't agree on everything. That is not an endorsement for too much disagreement.
No, not at all.
No.
I think...
And because somebody else here says, please stop letting your wife interrupt you.
No one said that. I don't believe that's there.
But she says, hearing both of your opinions usually blows my mind.
Anyway, but
Okay.
do we agree that I'm afraid we're reaching the end of the evening and we have to say goodnight?
Well, let's just think and see if we've covered the kind of pretty much what we did want to cover tonight. New Dawn Rising, I know that's not what you meant. I understand exactly what you're saying. And Jack says, hello, my rabbi, lovely to see you. I'm from London, England here. We've had hate crime laws here since 1998. It's made just to victimize white people as racists if we do anything.
And that's the fear, that it becomes something that's
it's
very
a weapon,
easily,
and
it's a weapon.
it comes between, it drives us apart rather than bringing us together. So I'd love to see the end of hate crime legislation. I really would. I'd love to see that utterly
Now, we
eliminated.
understand why Attorney General Barr felt he had to step in, because New York, and I must tell you that there were many prominent Jews who pushed for the taking away of bail. And I did want to comment just on one thing, because she said a lot of disturbed people. One of the things we need to discuss as a nation is, are we causing more people to be disturbed? In other words, is obviously there's something disturbed about a person who can go and slap somebody in the face on the street and yell expletives at them. But by that basis, pretty much any criminal we can say is disturbed. I mean, don't you have to be disturbed to climb into someone's house and rape somebody or steal money from them? Don't you have to be disturbed to do just about most of the things that are unacceptable behavior? So one of the questions we have to ask is, are there things in our society that are encouraging mental illness, and at the same time, I'm not talking severe mental illness, and at the same time, are we refusing to say as a society some things we are refusing to say, such as the fact that you want to defecate on the street in public and live on the street in public? Sorry, I'm not going to accept that is a normal and adult decision that you get to make, and I mustn't interfere with your chosen lifestyle. Just because something is a quote-unquote chosen lifestyle does not mean that as a society we have to say that's an acceptable lifestyle. And so we're not dealing a lot with mental illness because we've made a decision that a lot of mentally ill people have to have their rights rather than... that society, that they must be helped, they should be helped, and society must be protected from them, and that both those things have to happen. And really, that I would have to say, from our point of view, the first thing is that society needs to be protected, because every time you let an aberration into society, we would argue that's going to cause more people to have that aberration.
Okay, that needs more explanation than we're going to do tonight.
Well, let's do it in the master class.
But we will cover it then. So check out the opportunity to join in the project of doing a fresh new edition of America's Real War. You do that at the website rabbidaniellapin.com/masterclass or
masterclass.
Either way, spelt the same. A few more there. Yes. Somebody says, hey, Rabbi Daniel, didn't know you did live shows on YouTube. This is our first one.
First one.
Off topic. Do you have any thoughts on the political situation in South Africa? I have family that's quite tense.
Do you know that I just saw that they issued a warrant for for Zuma?
What?
Ex-President Zuma. I saw that on one page in the paper today.
I had such high hopes.
But I have nothing to say about it. I mean, I don't know anything more than that.
The truth is, I'm not up to speed. I mean, I try and keep in touch. I think many things. Look, I left South Africa 40 years ago, and back then, I got to tell you, It was a first world country, top-rate country. It really was. Were there problems? Of course. Was apartheid cruel and immoral? Yeah, obviously. Is what's happening now all wonderful and a huge improvement? Well, going back to the ordinary lives of ordinary people, I know a number of people in South Africa right now, people with black skins, who say they preferred it the old way. Was it demeaning in certain ways? Without question. Did they have to produce papers in a way that white people didn't have to when police stopped them? Absolutely. All very bad. But they did make a living and supported their families, and they were able to get around, and things worked, and they had electricity. A lot of those things are gone now. South Africa right now turns off the electricity for a number of hours a day. That's called third world conditions. You have it in South Africa and California. Yeah, that's right. California has become a third world. Just walk in the streets of San Francisco, walk in parts of LA. It is a third world country. And
unless you have enough money, like Nancy Pelosi and women,
to insulate yourself
insulate
from
yourself.
it. You're exactly right. Good point. So I think it's sad. I don't have any views about what's going on in South Africa at the moment. I haven't been there. I was in Africa a couple of months ago, but I didn't go as far south as South Africa. Susan, let's end on a positive, bright, upbeat note. So while you're thinking of that, I'm just going to see who else is with us.
Look, I have to tell you, there were a lot of positive notes. I thought the State of the Union was a positive note for me. This impeachment nonsense being over is a positive note. And the fact is that I hope this is not just anecdotal, but anecdotally, I'm certainly seeing many, many, many people saying my eyes are being opened. I am beginning to see
people who used to be leftists.
They weren't leftists. No, they were Democrats because they believed in things like free speech and tolerance and caring about people, saying, wow, this is not the party somehow this party has changed drastically. Yes. And so I can no longer, as a good person, I can no longer be part of it.
Okay,
so
well,
we should say good night, Gracie.
I'm going to wrap up with a couple more comments
here.
Gloria Lynn says, great discussion. Was wondering where to get the archive of your TCT previous shows. Love them so much.
Easy. You go on to the computer, and it's tct.tv. And when you get to the homepage of tct.tv, you look for on demand. And if you look for on demand, then you click on the on demand, and it'll give you a list. And we're towards the beginning because we start with an A, Ancient Jewish Wisdom, with Rabbi Daniel Lapin. And
they got a whole bunch of the shows up on tct.tv. And we love doing that show. It's and people seem to love it very much. So by all means, go over to TCT. That's like Tango, Charlie, Tango.
Tri-Cities.
Don't confuse, Susan. You overthink things too much. Remember me telling that to you?
All the time.
Tango, Charlie, Tango.tv on your internet, and go to On Demand, and then from there to Ancient Jewish Wisdom. So you'll enjoy that. No problem. Brendan, you're most welcome. Bill, hey Rabbi, do you have any resources on raising daughters? Are you kidding?
We got resources.
Oh my goodness. And we actually are much more comfortable with our resources now than we were 20 years ago, because our 6 wonderful daughters are now big girls, and it turns out that they've done
wonderful women.
They've done well. To me, they're still gals. They've done wonderfully, and so
I'll just give a plug for my practical parenting page. I do a practical parenting column, and you can find it on our website under Susan's Musings. You can find practical parenting. Sometimes it's been on there. It's certainly not aimed specifically to girls, but there are certainly things that I think are appropriate. And when people write me in questions having to do with, if you have a specific question, then if I have something to say, then I'll write something about it. But we're kind of big on kids.
Okay, Bang Bang in Jakarta says, good morning. It's morning for him from Jakarta, Indonesia. And he says, I haven't heard from you for ages. I used to. Well, all you got to do, Bang Bang, is make sure you are on our mailing list. So go to RabbiDanielLapin.com, go to Thought Tools, and subscribe. Just make sure you're on the
And
mailing
then make
list.
sure that your firewall is not stopping us coming through, whether you have to make us a preferred person or preferred website or whatever it is you have to do.
Yeah, please make sure you get us.
It sounds like something's blocking us.
Jim is mocking us about the accent of masterclass, or the way you say
Masterclass?
Yeah, he's mocking us. But Jim's allowed to mock us because he's actually the designer and the brains behind the scene of that very masterclass. So Jim can mock us. It's okay. Jim, open season on rabbis for you. Go for it. Andrew says to Bambang, iTunes video podcasts as well. Did you know that? No.
I don't even know what an
That's
iTunes video podcast is.
So iTunes, you can also watch that TCT show on iTunes, which is important for people to know. And shalom to bookkeeping. And Jack says, thank you. And thank you for taking the time to share this. I've become an addict to your content. I really enjoyed it as part of my driving. I'm so happy to hear that, because we do want to add to the joy of your life. Information and data is one thing, and it's part of it, but adding to your joy, helping you see how the world
really
works. We love doing that. So everybody, good night. John, thank you for writing. This is great. Really beautiful
Read
messages.
Christy's message. See,
Christy says,
you made up an anti-me message.
Love the practical parenting and Susan's musings, but she does keep interrupting.
She did not say that.
No, she didn't say that. I know. I love it when you interrupt. It's fine. I'd miss it if it wasn't there. I really mean that.
Thank you.
Okay. Folks, you have a wonderful evening, and to those of you across the date line, have a great morning and a good day. And hey, let us know. You can contact us at our website, rabbidaniellapin.com, where you can send us a message. If this kind of works for you, I think it can work for us as well, and I think we can do it more often if it is something that people enjoy. Thanks a lot. Sorry to keep you so long. This is longer. We thought we'd be doing this a little shorter. We thought we'd cut off half an hour ago, but here we are. Great night. Good morning wherever you are. God bless Rabbi Daniel and Susan Lapin. We're thinking of you. Good times always. We'll be together again soon.